aliping namamahay is way different from the aliping sagigili. Now, what is meant of aliping sagigili? Now, aliping sagigili were slaves. They were homeless, forbidden to form their own families, required to stay in the master's dwelling, and they could be used as payment for debt. Meaning to say they were forbidden to form their own families. They were required to stay in their master's dwelling, right? Meaning to say they had no have enough rights during the pre-colonial period. Now again, let's go back. First class of society, we have the Maharlikas. Second, Timawas. Third, Alipin. Were divided into two types, Aliping Namamahay and Aliping Sagili.
Aliping sa gigilid.
Now let's move on to the next type, or the houses during the pre-colonial period. So houses during the pre-colonial period. Houses were made of light materials, okay? Light materials like wood, bamboo, and nipa palm. A ladder was placed to prevent strangers from intruding when the owner was not around. So meaning to say, the houses during the pre-colonial period is way different already from the houses that we have right now, right? It's because the houses that we have right now were actually built with stones, bricks. So long before, were made only of light materials, bamboo, wood, and nipa palm. So they built also tree houses or houses near the sea. It's because it's one way of getting the resources during the pre-colonial period. Now, let's move on to the next type, or under the pre-colonial period is so-called clothing. Now, clothing, it's way different from what we have right now. Look at the picture. As you can see from the picture, some of them, they don't have the upper dress, right? Now, during the pre-colonial period, their clothing consisted of upper and lower parts. For male, let's proceed for male. For male, we have the so-called kangan. As you can observe, look at the picture. Kangan. Kangan is the upper part or was a jacket and a short sleeves called kangan. It's from the upper part of the male. Meanwhile, the lower part of the male is so-called pahag. Pahag, while the lower part of the strip cloth, look at the picture, wrapped around the wrist and in between of the legs called pahag. Right. So I want you to take down notes. It's because it will be part of our alpha and delta later on. Now, let's move on to the next part. We also have here putong. Putong, males also use a piece of cloth or headgear called putong. Look at the picture. Putong symbolizes, during the pre-colonial period, putong symbolizes the number of persons the wearer had killed. So if you're wearing putong, you need to say you're brave, you're strong enough during the pre-colonial period. Now, let's move on to the female clothing. Now, the female clothing, okay, the female clothing here, we have the baro or kamesa. Now, baro or kamesa, similarly, it's similar with the male clothing. We also have the upper part. For female, they wore baro or kamesa. It's named as baro or kamesa. Now, how about for the lower part? Now, for the lower part of the male, we have the saya. Okay? Meanwhile, female's lower part, it's named as saya. Then they also had this ornaments. Ornaments, those are jewelry that we have right now. Now, men and women wore ornaments to look attractive. These were named as kalumbiga, pendants, bracelets, and leglets. These ornaments were made of gold. Okay? Some wore gold fillings between the teeth, right? Tattoos were also fashionable for some pre-colonial Filipinos. They also exceeded a man's war record. So let's go back first. Okay, let's go back to the. Let's have a short recap of the female and male clothing. So I'd like to ask. Let's say, where is Judessa? Judessa, I'd like you to unmute your mic So,
Yes, sir.
okay, Janessa, I'd like to ask you if you really listened to our discussion a while ago. Let's go back to the male and female clothing. Now, what it's named for male clothing during the pre-colonial period?
For male, for upper part, you can call it kangan. Lower part, bahag. And putong, the piece of cloth on their head. For female, baro or kamisa for upper part, and saya for lower part.
Okay.
Ornaments, okay,
Yes,
thank you.
continue.
That's, okay na sa siya
Okay, so ornaments. What is meant of ornaments during the
it's,
pre-colonial period?
it's jewelry for now.
Okay, that's great. Good job for that one. So then keep your mic. Okay. Now let's move on to the next part. Okay, so let's move on to the government during the pre-colonial period. Now, what happened during the government during the pre-colonial period? Now, as you can observe, the government that we have right now, right? We already have the president, vice president, the senators, governor, right? Congressman. They ruled our nation. They ruled our country. They ruled our place, right? However, during the pre-colonial period, let's try to read first. The government was
Dato,
called,
dato.
okay, so the government was called barangay. Okay, barangay. There was no national government during the period. During that period, there were many independent barangays and datus, but there was no datu strong enough to unite the archipelago into one nation. Now it's way different from what we have right now. It's because what we have right now, we are united as one and we only have one president, right? That ruled the country. Meanwhile, before, during the pre-colonial period, they only had the barangay or the datu who ruled the barangay, right? And at the same time, there were different many independent barangays and datus. So barangay 1, they had their own datus and they had their own rules and regulation. Barangay 2, they also had their own datus, they also had their own rules and regulation, right? Some barangays, however, united to form a confederation. Okay, to form a confederation. It was headed by a ruler called Datu or Raha. Now you might ask me, sir, what is meant of confederation? How come? What is the meaning of that? How? Why they do have that one? So during the period when we say confederation, it's the uniting or the unity between one barangay and another barangay. So unit of government of the barangay, which consisted of from 30 to 100 families. The term came from a Malay word balangay. Okay, barangay came from a Malay word balangay, meaning boat. Barangays were headed by chieftains called Datu, as I've just mentioned a while ago. The chief or Datu was the chief executive, the legislator, the judge. He was also the commanders in the times of war. Alliances among barangays were common and these were formalized in a ritual called Sanduguan. So during the period, the confederation is through the so-called Sanduguan. So what is meant of the Sanduguan? Like for example, Datu 1 and Datu 2. So they will form a confederation alliance. Now what they will do is that they will have their blood compact. Okay? Blood
Yes.
compact between one
Blood.
Datu
They
to
they
another Datu.
drink the blood together each other.
uh, they don't drink the blood, however, they just what a pinch of blood here and another datu from here. So it's the so-called confederation or the sanduguan during the period. Meaning to say, they formed alliances. When we say alliances from one barangay to another barangay, we formed alliances to help each barangay. Now, is there any question about this part?
None. None.
Okay, good that you have no questions about this topic. Now let's move on to the next part, which is the education system during the pre-colonial period. So you might ask me, sir, what's the difference between the education system before and the education system that we have right now? As you can observe, the education system that we have right now you are studying on school, right? You're studying on school. When you enter college, you have different courses. So that's way different from the pre-colonial period. Now let's move on first to the so-called baybayin. Now, baybayin, during the period they had the baybayin or the alphabet. Okay, baybayin is an abugida writing system consisted of or consisting of 14 consonants and 3 vowels. So it's way different from what we have right now. Another thing is that education system during the pre-colonial period acquired through observation, imitation, and practice. No formal education, children were taught to read and write by their parents. So as I just mentioned, it's way different from what we have right now. It's because today you go to school, right? To study. Meanwhile, before, they acquire it through observation. Parents taught them fishing, agriculture, and other economic activities, and that's already the form of education during the pre-colonial period. Another thing is that mothers taught females to manage the household, meaning to say they were not allowed to. They don't have the proper education, just like what you are experiencing right now. Is it clear? Is it clear to everyone?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's
Yes,
great.
sir.